You also can't mask your poor leadership. You can't mask your poor culture. You can't mask your poor financial understanding and accountability. If you just go talk to somebody who's built a company of that size, they will, almost every single one of them will have a story where they compare their company at a larger size to their company at a smaller size. And they'll be like, we made more money at a smaller size than we did at this size.
Yeah, so we got Nate Dogg in the house today. What's up, Nate?
Good morning. How are you doing, Michael? You like Mike or Michael?
I've been called worse by better. Whatever you feel, brother.
Fair enough. I'll give it a try.
Yeah. So another episode of the Mission Control Podcast brought to you by yours truly, Mike Stearns with Ascend Digital Agency, and the team at Roofer. So if you need instant roof quotes, roof measurements, you want to talk to great people, you do CRMs, proposals, I mean, hit up the team at Roofer. There's going to be a link down in the description. Just hammer that fucking thing. They'll know I sent you, and you'll be happy you did. So I guess we'll set the scene why Nate's here. So, Nate, why don't you introduce yourself, and then I'll get into that.
Sure. My name is Nathan Tebedo, and I currently am a business coach and consultant with Contractor Coach Pro. I've been doing that now with Jim Johnson over there at Contractor Coach Pro for 7 years. And let's see here. Prior to that, I've been in this industry for 28, I want to say. So yeah, so that's kind of me, I guess.
Just 28 years, huh?
Yeah, that's it. Just 28 years. I started at 15 years old. I was just a kid, picking up the trash and handling loose ends and all that. And then eventually started getting trained on how to do installations and actually work with the material itself. And then my dad and I started a company together in 1999. And he and I built and ran that business together for about 15 years or 11 years, I guess, from 99. And then I went to work for a little company some of you guys might have heard of, AccuLinks software.
Once or twice, I think.
Yeah, I think I was like their number 9th employee, I think.
Wow.
Something like that. There was only a few of us back in the day. So, and then I worked for a couple more software companies after that in the security contracting space, which was pretty fun and interesting. It's just a little different. And so then from there, Jim Johnson and I kind of always stayed in contact. And then he said one day he and I were talking, and he was like, "What do you really want to do?" And I said, "Well, I've been doing a lot of this, working with contractors thing. And I think I'd like to go deeper in that and kind of be committed to just doing that with these guys." And he said, "Well, that's what we do. So why don't you come work with us?" And so that was 7 years ago.
Look at us now, thriving. You remember in 1999 when everyone was freaking out about Y2K and I was going to cripple the entire...
Yep. I remember that. And if I recall, I don't think anything actually happened. No. Because I don't remember anybody being like, "Oh, everything went okay except for this." And it's like nothing actually. It was a really weird thing. It was like nobody in the 1970s and 80s, nobody thought, "Hey, we're still going to have computers in 2000."
It's funny. I was driving to Florida with my dad, my stepmom, and my sister. We were going to Disney World for that Christmas break, and I looked down, and on the 20-hour drive, I realized that my zipper said YKK. I'm like, this is Y2K. I'm like, this is a sign. This is gonna be terrible.
This is gonna be awful. Armageddon.
Yeah, big flop. Nothing. And you might wonder where I disappeared to, folks. I, unfortunately for me, my guy Christian, who, as you know, if you've watched the show, he does all the production and editing. He's in, I believe, Austria. So I was left to figure this all out on my own. So he did a really good job. I talk about systems and processes. He did a really good job developing a very sound system to make sure that if he disappeared, I would know what to do. And I somehow fucked it up. So listen, we can't be perfect. Progress over perfection. It's all good.
That's right.
So, and do you mind if I call you Nate or Nathan?
Nathan would work. My name's actually Nathaniel. And so when people call me Nate, I'm like, all right, now you're shortening my name twice. So let's just stick with the Nathan.
Yeah. See, this lazy guy like myself. So I'm going to publicly apologize to Nathan here.
No worries.
And I won't let it happen again. I wanted to talk to Nathan because I've got a client. We started working together when he was maybe a couple million in revenue, and he's probably going to do 20 plus this year, I would say. Mm-hmm. And, he'd asked me, he's like, have you ever talked to Nathan? I said, no, I'd love to. I sent Nathan a friend request. Wah, wah, wah. Years later, now my client, he asked me, he's like, hey, I haven't seen Nathan on the show. Did you ever reach out? I was like, oh, yeah, I reached out. Sent a friend request. I was like, here, it's still pending after all this time.
Yeah. Yep. I am not, just a full admission, I am not the best at social media. It's like every now and then I try to check certain things, and sure enough, I'll be like, oh my gosh, there's a message here from God knows when.
2016. No.
But hey, I need help right now. Oh no.
In my conversation with said client, he said that you have been massively impactful as far as him being able to get himself and his team from where they were to where they are. And I haven't heard him say that about, he's worked with a lot of people in different capacities, vendors. And as you guys know, you're getting hit up by every day by somebody who's got something to sell you. And it was refreshing to hear somebody speak in such high regard about somebody in the industry. So that's what compelled me to send that friend request. And that's what compelled me to ask you on the show. And I'm sure grateful that you accepted.
Well, first of all, I know who you're talking about, and if he sees this or hears this, thank you for all the kind words. I appreciate that. I started working with him a number of years. See, I want to say it's been 4 years or so, I think, that we started working together. So watching his growth and his development at his company, and just the hard work that he puts in is pretty cool. And then he's open, and he's humble, and he's hungry, and he's always willing to learn, which always seems to lead him and I to having really, really cool, impactful conversations. And then when he learns something, he wants to use it. And so then he literally goes and he tries to apply it, rather than taking things in and then not doing anything with those things, which is, I got a buddy of mine, some of you guys might know Reggie Brock, and he was kind of on this thing for a little while where he was talking about information saturation. The amount of content that exists in the world is just, it's limitless. I mean, you can, that's why we talk about,
and crippling.
Yeah. We talk about the YouTube rabbit hole, right? Because if you get on a topic on YouTube, you can just keep going. And so we take in so much information, and then we listen to a podcast like this one, or we go to a webinar, or we get newsletters from people, or we watch videos, or we go to a conference. And we just take in all this stuff and execute on virtually none of it. And so that's a really difficult thing, but I wouldn't say that's his thing. He truly tries to limit his intake to only what he feels like he can execute on, which is unique to entrepreneurs.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I would say, and maybe I don't want to glaze them. I mean, the kids these days, that's what they would call it if we're, paying compliments to somebody, glazing. But we'll let the cat out of the bag. It's Austin Fricker, Fricker Roofing. Shout out to Austin. You're the go, bro. It's such a common issue that I see, and it's whether it's with coaching or some sort of consulting, mentorship, the roofing shows, everyone's rah, super excited. Sure. They're going to do everything when they get back to the office, and it's kind of like, those ambitions seem to die. But, the ones that you see have that type of success year over year consistently are, from what I've seen, the ones that they take it very seriously, as far as the information I'm going to take in. They're very intentional about where they're putting their attention and ultimately implementing those things, whatever it is, right? It could be a call answering service. It could be finance things from a coach. It doesn't matter. And they approach all of the things. People tend to prioritize things, right? But the problem is when you're running a business, as I'm sure you know, and you're well aware, like the bullets start flying and that priority list goes out the fucking window. Now you're just shooting from the hip, running and gunning. Mm-hmm. He's developed a keen ability to be able to, and don't get me wrong, he's very busy, but to be able to keep things in check as far as his priority list and hammer through him. I'm going to have him on and talk through that. Like, how do you do it, sir? Like, what has been effective for you? Because I think that's a skill that not everybody has and would serve many people well, right?
Yeah, there's a characteristic I think that goes along with that, and I see this characteristic as I think a common thread with the clients who I work with who see the most amount of growth and sustainability, not just in their business but also personally. And there's this characteristic of deeper level thinking. And it's not necessarily what it is strategic. It's just putting your mind power to things more than like a dog chasing a car. As one car goes by, they're chasing this car. Another car goes by, they're chasing this car. And so in order to create that focus, one of the things that's required and that I see is common amongst these folks is the ability to sit down and think deliberately and deeply about their business and what they want, because that can help to eliminate the distractions. So if you either don't know where you're trying to go, or you're letting others via social media tell you what success looks like or what you should be trying to accomplish, then if you don't know where you want to go, or if you're letting other people tell you where you want to go, then you're consistently going to have your attention grabbed, and you don't have a standard that you can use to decide where your focus ought to be. So I call them roofing fads. And so I've been in the business long enough. Like back in the day, one of the big ones was spray foam. Like it kind of came out of nowhere. It'd been around for a while. It didn't do real great for a little bit. It got better over time. But all of a sudden, this concept of insulating and waterproofing simultaneously became this huge thing. And everybody was trying to get into spray foam and get a spray foam machine. Yeah, open cell foam and closed cell foam and, self waterproofing and then coating waterproofing. And it was just this huge thing. And then that thing kind of like, it died out. It's still a big business, right? Because they've gotten better at it and made it better. Then coatings was a huge thing, which kind of spurred off of that. Just then everybody was trying to coat and refurb. And then, and the latest one, I'll ask you this. What do you think is the current one?
The current big thing?
Major distraction. I think there's probably two actually right now.
Solar.
Yep.
Solar. And give me a second. You guys be patient with me, all right? It's a tough question. I got one of them right, so that's good as a worst case scenario. Definitely solar, and then give it to me.
No, PE.
What's that?
Private equity.
Oh, yeah.
Major distraction. Now, I'm not knocking solar and I'm not knocking PE either. I'm just saying that they kind of have disrupted the industry a bit, and the majority of the people who get involved with either, I'm going to say just straight out, and any PE firm would agree with this statement. So the majority of the contractors try to get involved with either don't end up doing very well, or it doesn't go real great for them. But there are a few small people who get into solar and they do it right and it turns out real well. There are a few tiny little number of contractors that actually could benefit or could possibly sell their company in PE. But what happens is that the universe of contractors starts going crazy about these things. And so, but that deep thinking component is what allows you to kind of sit back and say, is this the right move? Like, should I be doing this? Should I get involved in this? And Austin's one of those people that has that ability to kind of sit back and, don't get me wrong, he's excitable for sure, but he'll check it. He'll check it with thought, focus, concentration, and quiet time to reflect and figure out, okay, is this what's best for me? Is this what's best for my company? Does this help us get where we're trying to go? Is it a distraction? What do I have to do to make this happen? Do I believe all the promises, which you never should? So, and that's something that's just really key, because the other thing that I see that happens a lot is if you don't really know where you're trying to go, or you're letting other people tell you where you're trying to go, then you spend a lot of time and energy building somebody else's dream because you don't have one of your own.
That makes a lot of sense.
And believe it or not, most of us, and I've talked to, at this point, probably thousands of contractors at this point, most of us don't have a real good grasp of what we actually want. And then those that I've talked to that do, what they need to get what they want is typically a whole lot less than they think it is. Like building a $20 million, $30 million company is an extraordinary amount of work. Like extraordinary amount of work. Do you need to do that?
I love that. I ask that question when people when they reach out and we're talking about like, what are your goals? You know, because obviously we want to tailor a marketing and advertising strategy to be commensurate with you reaching them. It's be a company that's doing 3 million. Like, I want to go to 15 in the next 2 years. I'm like, are you sure?
Right.
You know, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. There's a lot. It's just even taking a look at like systems and processes, what you have built out for you at 3 million and what that's going to look like or should look like at 15 million is going to be vastly different, right? And I always say, and it's been my experience, that the issues that you have at 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, they don't have a proportionate impact as you get to 10, 15, 20. They become much more impactful and detrimental as you add more chefs into the kitchen, as you have more customers, as there's more opportunities for breakdowns, they become flagrantly apparent. And when you've got two people that are giving their all to the company, and that's all that they care about, sometimes you can mask the symptoms of having weak processes or not having processes. You can't do that shit at 15 million.
No, you can't. You also can't mask your poor leadership. You can't mask your poor culture. You can't mask your poor financial understanding and accountability. And if you just go talk to somebody who's built a company of that size, they will, almost every single one of them will have a story where they compare a higher, I'm trying to phrase this so it makes sense. Almost all of the guys who built a company like this will have a story where they compare their company at a larger size to their company at a smaller size. And they'll be like, we made more money at a smaller size than we did at this size.
Oh yeah.
All of them. And oftentimes it'll be like the 15 million or the 5 million compared to the 15, the 12 or 15. You go talk to somebody who's built a $20 or $30 million company. They'll be like, I actually, like, on this path, I made more money at 5 and 6 million than I did when we hit 12.
Yeah.
So then it comes back to the question of, well, why? Not why did you, I mean, I know why they didn't make as much money, right? But why did you feel compelled to continue to grow that company? So if you can make $500,000 a year, $500,000 a year with a company that's like between 5 and 7 million,
it's not terrible.
Yeah. How much more money do you need and what is it for? So then I always end up coming back to like, what are you trying to buy? like you make 300, 400, 500 grand a year under 10 million. What are you trying to buy that you need that? Now, I have talked to a few people who actually have a pretty good answer for that, but the majority that I talk to, they don't. I'm like,
what's one of the good ones?
What's that? What's
one of the good answers?
One of my favorites was a company out of Texas, and the guy that owned it was from they're still around, from South Africa, and his goal was to try and build a like $50+ million company. And one of the reasons behind it is because the thing he was truly passionate about was a ministry called I think it was called Samaritan Ministries. And their primary objective was bringing fresh water to places where it was highly inaccessible. And then they began to expand into, solving hunger and things like that. And he was already doing that. But what he realized is that if he can get his company to a certain size, then that can fund this real passion that he had. And he had a very large goal and a very large heart for that ministry. And so he had a really good reason to try and push that company to its size.
Yeah.
But
That's amazing.
But if you're sitting back and you're like, well, I want to get out of debt. I want to own nice vehicles on cash. I'd like to have a lake house. I want to send my kids to private school. I want to put money away for retirement. I'm like, you know how much money it takes to do that? Not much.
Yeah.
Not
less
much.
than you'd think.
Yeah, a whole lot less than, like I said, $500,000. What can you do with that? Quite a bit.
There's one more thing I want to talk about, and then we'll kind of dig into, I guess, in people that are in the situation that Austin was in, like what kind of things that you typically find, so that the folks listening, if they're in that $1 to $3 million range, at least they have an opportunity to start looking for things within their business that maybe they can improve. But one of the things that I noticed with our most successful clients over the years is they're pretty smart. They're very good at what they do, but they're also coachable, and they rely on people that they hire. They vet the people. It's not saying they, blind trust. They vet the people that they work with, but then they trust them to give them good information. And whether it's adopting a CRM, whether it's hiring a marketing agency, it's a coach, it's, training for employees, like they find people that are better than them at what they do. They pay for them to come in and be better than them and actually listen to what they say. I've worked with a lot of people over the last 11 years, and it's like, there's plenty of them that, will pay you and then, challenge you every step of the way. I'm not sure why, but if you're doing that, that's not the recipe to getting the most fruit out of the harvest. It's just not. Just work that in there.
Oh.
Love you guys.
So yeah, when Jim started Contractor Coach Pro, that was like 10 years, coming up on 12 years ago, I think, is when Contractor Coach Pro started. There weren't a lot of people doing contractor coaching, especially in the roofing space. There just weren't that many people out there doing that. There were a few guys out there. But at this point now, I kind of, in a lot of ways, I feel like I empathize with contractors, because there's every sales guy who sold $1 million now wants to go teach other people how to sell $1 million, which,
That's right.
Which, honestly, today, let's be frank, $1 million is just not that much anymore. But that being said, I'm not trying to insult anybody who sold $1 million. Good job. Keep it up. But for a contractor who's looking for help, it's murky waters these days, very murky waters. And I know that it is, it's like social media salacious to go, oh, well, these people suck and these guys really good and this guy sucks and this guy's really good. The truth is, most of these people out here that offer programs to help you probably have some good content that you could use. Almost all of them. And so the question really is what they have for you.
Yeah. Because
I've seen content that I felt was very elementary, very baseline. And then from my selfish opinion, I was like, I don't feel like that's really all that great. And then I'm sitting next to somebody who just is eating it up. Why? Because that's just where they are. Versus the guy on the other side of me that maybe has been in the industry for 15, 20 years, and he's gone through all of this. And for him, he's like, I know all this. I've done all this. This guy over here has been in the industry for 2 years. He's trying to make sure his company makes it to 3. And he's just like, oh, this is really, really good. Yeah. So I wouldn't come in with this concept that like some people have really, really good stuff and other people have bad stuff. That's not really the question. The question is what they have for you. Are you in a place where their content is hitting you where you are? So, for example, if you're a $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million contractor, and you're listening to somebody up on stage who's built a $50 million company, and they're talking about scaling, and they're talking about delegation, and that content is probably not for you. You're not in the place where they go, let me tell you how I got from 10 million to 50 million. Okay, that's super cool. But if you're at 2 million, you're not even at the starting point where their content actually takes effect.
Right.
So it's not that what that guy's saying is bad or wrong. It's just that you need other things than what's being delivered. And so that's where that coachability and that realization of where you are is super important. And humility too. Like just understand, like, look, I'm not that big yet. I've got one employee. Right. It's like, so maybe right now we need to be thinking about the fastest, easiest way to generate revenue while keeping our overhead low than trying to build a 20-person sales team. Because you're probably not ready for that yet. But somebody's going to sell you on you are, and they're going to want 20 grand from you to teach you how to do it, whether you're ready for it or not. That is the one thing about a lot of the people in my space that does frustrate me sometimes is, like, they're a hammer and every contractor's a nail, if that makes sense. Oh, yeah. And so it doesn't matter where you're at. What I've got for you is for you. Not necessarily.
Yeah, and I mean, that's not just, it's not exclusive to roofing, right? Any industry, you're going to have somebody trying to sell you something, and then there's some people you'll reach out to, or they'll reach out to you, and after asking a few questions, like, hey, maybe this isn't the right fit for you right now. Here's where I'd start. Here's a company, here's a resource, and then when you get to this point, we can absolutely help you.
Yes.
And then, like you said, there's the hammer and nail situation where it's
doesn't matter what you say. They think their thing is going to work for you, and it's not that
you ain't going to get to 20 million by not doing this.
Right.
How's it work for you thus far?
Yeah. So
it's frustrating.
I would just say, just consider where you're at and what you're struggling with when it comes to analyzing what you let in and what you try to do. Like, if you're at 2 million and you go to a conference where there's multiple breakouts going on, and one of them is like marketing and sales and the other one's processes and job description creation, you should probably go to processes and job description creation.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
And don't buy dreams, right? Like, because I feel like there's, like, we all want the optimal situation. We all want a lot of money and to grow our companies. Most people do. At the surface level, but then, take a step back, don't pull the trigger on that call. Think realistically, like, what would my life look like? What would my company look like if I hired 5 people tomorrow for sales?
Yeah.
Like, how would we fulfill it? Do we have the crews? Do we have the systems to make sure that, we're not botching every job, ripping off the wrong roof? Seen that happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my God. I've done it. I've 100% torn off the wrong roof. Like, where was I? I was somewhere the other day, and the guy up there was like, almost everybody in the room did residential work of some kind, and he's like, who in here has torn off the wrong roof? And it was like, probably 70% of the room raised their hand. He's like, if you didn't raise your hand, you're either a liar or you haven't been in the business long enough.
That's funny. So speaking of these contractors, let's say under 3 million. There's symptoms and then there's underlying issues. And a lot of times guys try to just, take ibuprofen because they got a headache. Figure out why you have a headache. So what are the true underlying issues to what are the woes that they feel? What are the symptoms? And what are the true underlying issues? And what can they do to be better and to get rid of that underlying issue?
Let's see here. So you said 3 million?
Yeah, let's say under 3 million.
Under 3 million. So, one of the things that you'll see is at that stage is you're going to see people whose core group of people is good. Their core group is pretty good. And you know why? Because it's made up of all their friends and family. They've got their mom or their wife doing their books. They've got, their son is out running production. Dad's doing all the sales. And the owner's dad is running production, management. Like, it's all best friend is another sales guy. And so when you're in that stage, I call that stage friends and family. So I tend to break down company stages in about 6 different company stages. So stage number 1 is like startup. You're like, you've decided to do this and you got to get your company name going. You got to register it with a state. You got to get trying to get all the boxes checked, right? Yep. Stage 2 is like owner operator or solopreneur. So that guy's kind of done all those things, but now he's like trying to generate revenue, like he's trying to get money through the door, trying to sell and produce jobs, and they're generally working by themselves, or they may have one other person or something like that helping them out. Right. And then when you get to friends and family, that's the stage you're kind of talking about, like 3 million and under is generally the friends and family stage. And so what's happened at this point is the guy's kind of got beyond, guy or gal has gotten beyond doing everything by themselves, and they've brought on help. And that help will almost always be the people closest to them. It'll almost always be, because they're the people within arm's reach.
Right.
And so in those scenarios, your leadership and culture struggles don't necessarily pop up too much, because birds of a feather flock together, right? Like my best friend is probably going to have very similar values and a very similar way of viewing the world than I do. And so when we work together, there's probably not going to be a lot of clashing in value and culture. Okay. But when you're trying to build beyond that, so you're at friends and family and you're trying to get into like the build a team stage, you've run out of friends and family, and now we need other people that are outside of that. And so that is when I start to see people have a lot of turnover. They complain about their sales team, or they complain about these people they hire, or they can't find anybody good to come work with them. They don't, and so the headache is turnover. The headache is they bring somebody else in and there's a little bit of drama that happens. These are the headaches. And so they take an ibuprofen, which is fire that person, hire another one.
Yep.
Okay. Or they buy a system of some kind. Like they go to a roofing conference and they see somebody say, we can help you, blah, blah, blah. And they go pay thousands and thousands of dollars for this thing. The underlying root is that their business has gotten to a point where the lack of foundation is being exposed. And so when you're running and gunning just by yourself and then a few people that are close to you, there's not a ton of foundation needed per se. Okay. But when you begin trying to bring in other people and you're beginning to try and train and lead other people, your lack of foundation is the real root cause.
Get exposed quick.
And then your headaches are showing up in turnover, in drama, in poor production, lack of accountability, and chaos. Like everybody's wearing a lot of hats. Right? I hear that a million times, right? Well, that's not because your people don't know what to do. It's that our lack of foundation is being exposed.
So true. Love it.
So, your cures to that. And I say this because like culture eats strategy, period. Hands down. I've seen it time and time and time and time and time again. A company that's a little wild, a little unhinged, but they have a really powerful culture and their people are highly bought into it, that will outpace the most amazing strategies and structures you've ever put in place with the wrong people who don't care and aren't bought in.
Yeah.
So culture eats strategy.
100%. I worked for a large company doing sales, and when they would need people to stay late or to come in on the weekend or whatever, right? Like I had one specific manager and she's like, I really need you this weekend. I need you to get a sale. And I'm like, whatever, like I'll do my best to help you. But we had 10 other people on the team and everyone's just kind of looking at her. It's a situation where if those folks care, right, through the culture that you've created, if they care enough about you to know that you need something and they'll go to war and fight till no end, till there's 4 zeros on the clock, you're not going to have to ask them. You might not even be in that situation to begin with because you'll probably get more production out of them in the former part of the month.
Right.
But when you're in a situation where you're begging for people's help and they're all kind of just like, you've been beating us down for 3 weeks.
Right.
I once asked this manager, I was like, why don't you do something that, tries to motivate the folks instead of a 30-minute beatdown in the beginning of the day? It's not my job to motivate people. Okay. Got it.
Okay. Like, I mean,
understood.
That's a leadership style,
Yeah.
So I look at like when somebody is in that stage you're talking about and they're trying to move to the next one, that's when actually building the foundation becomes super, super critical. And if you're listening to this and you're in this stage, don't worry, okay? Don't freak out. This is actually the best time to sit down and try to do it. It's really, because when you're in a stage prior to that, dude, revenue is king. Your company is not going to survive unless you can get out there and sell some jobs and protect your net, right? There's a song out there, Protect Your Neck, right? We need to build one that's
Wu-Tang, I think.
Protect your net.
Protect it. We should do a Mike and Nathan rendition.
There we go. Protect your net. And so if you're in that stage, the good news is now is the time to do it. And that laying that foundation really does look like setting up, like, how big does this company really need to be? You're moving out of the survival mode into, okay, if I decided to, like, we've got business, what do we do with all? You need to sit down and kind of lay out your dream. How big do I really need to make this company? That's always going to be based on the dream that the owner has. What kind of life do you want? Where do you want to live? What do you want? What is your wife or your husband or your kids after? What does success truly look like for you? Your answer to those questions are what decide how big your company needs to be.
Oh, yeah.
Pure and simple. Okay? If you build for the sake of building, then at some point you'll experience some success, and then you'll be like, hey, we're there, and you'll take the hands off of things, and that plane will eventually crash, just so you know. So then you go, okay, well, if I know what we're after, we can establish how big the business needs to be. We now also need to establish our culture and who we are, and establish powerful leadership and effective leadership inside of our business. Those are part of your foundations. And if you can get those, then from there, you can then begin to work on processes and your tactics and your strategies, all in order to get to a company of a particular size. So that's, if you're experiencing that and you're at that stage, it's foundation building time.
Yeah. And, sorry guys, for those of you that are listening, just listen to the whole statement, not just the first part. Like, I low key love when someone reaches out to me, and they're usually if they're at that like solopreneur to getting into the friends and family, or just starting the friends and family, and they're like, I'm fucking, I'm dying a slow death over here. I got 13 hats on my head. It's super, for me, it's super exciting, because I know that once you get some shit figured out, you're going to be super happy, right? Like, you've gone through some really tough shit to get where you're at. I mean, for them, it feels like the end of the world every day, right? They're super stressed out.
Hanging on. Yeah.
But I've read this book a lot of times. And what's that?
Yeah, I said you're 100% correct. Like that, that is a crazy, exciting stage of your business. It doesn't feel like it when you're in it, but it is.
And it's like, you look back on this and you'll laugh, and, these are some things that you need to focus on, talk to these people, things like that. But it's easy just in general. And I think it's human nature that a lot of people tend to gravitate and stress on the things that are having the negative impact, right? Like, how do I fix this? How do I fix this? How do I fix this? Some things you can fix, some things you can control, some things you can influence, some things you can't do either. But there's a lot of things in those two stages where you can influence or control them, or get to a point where in the near future that you can. Feels overwhelming. There's a lot of shit to look at. It's going to require some heavy lifting. But if you're intentional, and especially if you have things mapped out, kind of like you're talking about, to some degree, varying degrees, it's like, now we can start to reverse engineer. Okay, I want to be at 10 million in 3 years. Okay, I'm at 2 million now. So I got to add $8 million in revenue over the next few years. What are the things that are going to actually get me there?
Right.
What I would do is talk to some people that have done it.
Yeah.
Especially the guys that are in like those Facebook groups. A lot of folks are more than willing to bend an ear and help folks that are at where they've been before. And whether it's because they just want to make a difference, they like hearing themselves talk, whatever. Who cares what the motive is?
Yeah.
Use that to your advantage and ask questions. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah. Having people around you that you can reach out to and ask those questions. Some people are, depending on the market that you're into, some people are just kind of closed off and they're not going to talk to you. They might view you as competition. It's like, but you're right. There are those people out there that'll just be like, yeah, I'll 100% talk to you. I'll 100% try to help you. If working with you elevates our industry, like I'll do it. And, you just, and the other thing too is you have to listen closely to what they say, because we as people have this amazing ability to only hear what we wanted to hear, regardless of what somebody said. I don't know how it is that we like. I do the same thing.
Yeah,
I'll be talking to my wife, and she'll be like, "What did you hear me say?" It's like, "I heard you say this. That is not what I said." I'm like, "Okay." So
that was 7% of it, Nathan.
that's right.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. So definitely reach out to those folks. And the amount of resources that are available now that are just free. I mean, it used to be you'd read books. Like you'd just buy a physical book and you'd go read, the E-Myth, or one of these types of business books. And then you just go try to apply that. Now, God, there's podcasts and YouTube channels and still books, digital, audio, and physical. There's so much content out there. Like I said, sometimes I feel bad for contractors that, they're trying to navigate just the sea of info.
Yeah.
But you got to start with where you're at. That was Austin. So a funny story about Austin. And he's one of those guys that would talk to you if he's got a second. But when we started working with Austin tried to kind of lay out this big, we were saying, well, what do you want for yourself and for your life? And there's one of my, I tell this story. I don't always use Austin's name, but Austin laid out this big plan and this big vision for his business. And I'm looking at this vision. I'm like, okay, you can do this. I know you can. What do you want that's requiring your business to look like this? And he went kind of radio silent for about, I think it was 2 weeks. I was like, okay, what did I do here, right? He comes back and he goes, I scrapped the whole thing. I was like, okay, like this is Austin. He's like, I scrapped the whole thing. He goes, I don't need all of that. And as I think about it, trying to do all that sounds like way more work than I want to do. I said, okay, well, what do you want? Because this is actually what I want. And so he laid out like a much more accurate, heartfelt life that he wanted to live. And it completely revolutionized the vision that he had for his company, changed it entirely. And then we started working on that thing instead. And so his story is really quite cool, but it's not unique. Like there's lots of guys out there that I know, like just from my own experience that I've worked with, that rewrite it to be really what they want, and then they accomplish, like Austin did. Like they actually accomplish it, and then one of my like, one of the most rewarding things that I do is when I get a client that I worked with or have been working with, they call me back and they're like, Nathan, we did it. Like, what do you mean? Like, we did it. Like, we laid out this vision and we just accomplished the last component of it.
Bang.
And you're like, and what's so much fun is like almost every one of the calls I have with people when they do that is, what do we do next? Yeah. And I'm like, all right, it's new vision time.
Yep.
It's
amazing. So we got the solopreneur and the friends and family. At what revenue point does that scale typically tip over or pour over into the next stage after friends and family? Is it 4 million, 5 million?
So we have to put a little bit of a caveat to this, and that is when I like, the typical home service contractor that I'm working with is usually large ticket, sell it, build it, collect it, home service contractors. So when you think about the largest tickets on your home, roof, siding, windows, fencing, believe it or not, it's like this little well-kept secret. Like,
yeah, I had one put in not too long ago. That sucked.
Dude, you think getting your siding is expensive?
Yeah.
Go redo 500 feet of split rail wood fencing. Like, it's just as much as anything else you could do on your house.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just got a vinyl fence, and I'm like, you want how much?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like, so anyway, hopefully I didn't let that cat out of the bag for the fencing contractors out there. But so the reason why I say that is because those large ticket items, your average per ticket, the higher it is, obviously the fewer clients you deal with in order to hit the 1 million, the 2 million, the 3 million. Okay. So for example, like I talked to a landscaping contractor out of California a couple years ago, and I was like, how many clients would you say you dealt with last year? She's like, oh, probably like, I think she said like 1,100 individual interactions with clients. I was like, 1,100. And I said, what was your revenue that year? She said 950,000. Right?
Yeah.
And she had a staff of like 13 to do less than $1 million. Right. So I just want to put the caveat, because what you asked is a very good question, but I need to put a qualifier around it. So
that makes sense.
If you do window siding, gutters, fencing, something where your average ticket's like $10, $12, $17,000, then these numbers will hold true. But if your average ticket's like $1,200, $1,500, you're going to be like, that doesn't make any sense at all. That would be why. Okay. So,
if there are any landscapers or smaller ticket contractors watching this, make yourself be known in the comments. Let me know you're there, and then we'll tailor some advice to you.
Yeah, absolutely. But so your solopreneur in like the roofing, siding, windows industry, those guys can probably get to anywhere between like 9 to 1.1 or 1.2 million on their own, right? Because if your average ticket's 10 grand, that's 100 jobs. Right. And right now, average tickets are probably more than 10 grand. So it's less than 100. So your typical guy who can kind of do it all can usually do somewhere in that range. Okay. So in order to crack that and get into the, 1.5, 2 million, 2.5 million, that's when you're kind of starting to move into that friends and family. You're like, I can't do all this on my own. I need help. You reach out, and the first people you grab a hold of are the ones closest to you. Make sense?
Yep.
So friends and family will generally end up going from maybe like that 1.5 to close to 3, maybe 3.5. Because what you'll also hear a lot of guys who've built businesses above and beyond, like they'll tell you that it really felt like the wheels were starting to come off around close to 4.5 million.
Yeah.
In other words, that next major cycle of evolutionary change to your company will probably be as you try to get to 5 million. So that's when that next stage, so from friends and family to like building a team, is usually hovering around that 5 million is where that number usually is. Once again, very general, because you might do work somewhere where your average ticket's way higher, or it might be quite a bit lower. And so then you get into this friends and family, or this team building stage. That's normally when people have to start hiring people from outside of their immediate sphere. That's normally when you see people starting to really focus on trying to build a sales team, a sustainable sales team. You'll see processes and culture, like all of that stuff. Like I said, it's going to expose your lack of foundation if you have one. So then from that like team building stage, if you can get through that, that'll take you typically from that 4.5, 5 million to, probably 6, 8, maybe 10. And that, so what happens is that the length of growth gets bigger as you get better at business. Mm-hmm. So the better at business you are, typically the longer the ranges of major change need to happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. So if you've got a team built and you guys are pretty good, like as a team, and you're highly efficient, then 5, 7, maybe you get to 10, and that starts to vary based on like your production capacity, and then like your sales team and your ability to build good sales people. So that I call that like the growth stage. Like we're really trying to like grow, Then once you start hitting that like 12 million number in there, then I think you could start using words like you're in the scaling phase. Scaling is a buzzword. I hate using it, but it really is a good word. It's a good word that got spoiled. But scaling is when now like everybody has very specific jobs to do in the process. And scaling is when we begin to reduce the number of things each person in your company does, because of the increase in volume for the set of tasks that they have. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden, I'm not trying to hire more people who can do a lot of things. I'm hiring more people who do more specialized things.
Right.
And they're very, very good. They handle this right here. They're very, very good at it. And so that's what scaling looks like. And so scaling, now you're talking like you're talking anywhere from 12 to 20 to 30. And then all of a sudden, like, you'll really start to notice how good you are at building leaders, because you can't directly lead anybody anymore, but it's on you to build the leaders who do lead. And so I kind of call that's like stage 5 contractor, is like they're kind of in this scaling mode. Stage 6 is a weird one because I don't have a great term for it. I call it like proliferation or maybe exit strategy. So it's like you've built maybe a 30, 40, $50 million company, and you're like, well, now what do I do with this thing? Like, do I get out of it? Do I keep running it? Do my kids going to, like, now what? So I don't end up having to pay too much attention to that stage because there just really aren't that many contractors in it. But most of the time when somebody's in that, they're usually looking at like exit strategies. Like, what do I do now? Like, how do I get out of this? How do I go do something else? I'm tired. So
seems like a really cool concept, retiring. I don't know that I'll ever retire. The minute that I start getting bored, I start making bad choices. So
I don't think entrepreneurs ever do.
Yeah.
It's what's the next thing?
Yeah.
Like, they're going to do this thing. They're going to do that thing. Now all of a sudden they got hundreds of thousands of dollars in their pocket, burning a hole in it. And they're like, I'm going to go invest in this thing, or I'm going to start a company with this guy, or I'm going to, then they start playing with the fruits of their labor, probably trying to build more. Cause for an entrepreneur, I think the mindset tends to be, it's a game. Like, it's just a game. Like, how am I getting better at this game? Like, now I'm going to try playing a different game, right? Like, I'm going to partner in a brewery, or I'm going to open up a bed and breakfast, or I'm going to, and they want to play the game somewhere else and see how they do. Like,
it's got to be real tough going from selling shit with an average ticket of $12K to selling, $139 rooms with $15 breakfasts.
Right.
It's different, right? And it's okay.
Yeah.
But it just, there's got to be some shock value when you start looking at like your monthly revenue.
Yeah,
we did 7,000 this month. It was a really good month.
Yeah, started a restaurant. How does anybody do this? Like, and there, guys,
that's where lifetime
dreams,
value of a customer comes into play.
What's that?
Lifetime value of a customer, repeats, things like that in the restaurant world.
Oh, my goodness.
Important.
Yeah, it's like 20% of your customers support 80% of your business or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually why I never wanted to do marketing for restaurants. Like, early in my career, I used to, when I worked at the company, it kind of gave you existing relationships and things like that, and you'd have to work with some of them, and it's fine. But when it comes to digital marketing, what I loved about it is that I can prove to you things. I can prove to you that, hey, we got you this many leads. I can prove to you that, hey, if you pull up your CRM, we go through all these and see what you sold, who you sold, what the profit was, and like prove to you that you're making money.
Yeah.
And with, when you're dealing with that type of business model where it's, let's look at the lifetime value, I can't prove any of that. I can prove you that this dude came and called from this ad, or submitted a form from this ad, or did whatever, booked a reservation. I don't know what he ordered. Maybe it was a $300 meal. Maybe it was $40.
Right.
I'll slide into a restaurant and be like, just give me a steak tartare and eggplant Napoleon and get up out of there. I can't tell you if he came back next week. So I like the acquisition based model.
Well, I don't, I don't think that entrepreneurs generally like retire. It's like they're constantly trying to create. They're constantly trying to build things. They're that competitive nature might get tempered with some age and wisdom and maturity, but it never really totally goes away. And as long as they don't burn out, suffer a stroke or a heart attack or something completely jacks them up, which can happen. I mean, I've met some people that they run on an octane level that's wild. And it's, is high. The higher your octane, the more purposeful you should be at managing it. If you're a pretty even keeled person, and you kind of steady Eddie, right? You need to pay attention to it, but it's your own temperament kind of manages yourself. But if you're just like balls to the wall until you crash, then balls to the wall and you crash, like, it's really unhealthy. And so you need to pay even more attention to the rhythms and the ebb and flows of life and and keeping your mental state fresh. And something that, I've been thinking about and talking with a lot of my clients about too is the idea of, balance versus tension. I think we have a poor view of it. I think that we strive for work-life balance, which I think maybe we've sold ourselves on this idea that work-life balance is some kind of like Zen zone. Yeah. It's a feeling where I think about that, like, is it the little yoga character that's sitting there cross-legged with a light inside and they're just like, boop, right? And we're like, oh, I am balanced with work life. I don't think that's the reality of what a healthy life looks like. I think the reality of a healthy life is tension. Is that you have a good thing over here and you have a good thing over here, and you feel a tension between the two of them. And if you're too far into one side of a good thing or you're too far to the other side of that good thing, that's unhealthy. So I'll give you an example. What would be a good example of that? Here we go. So delayed gratification. Okay. Delayed gratification is a very, very good thing. That means we save our money. We put things away. We maybe put off the immediate need, the immediate desire for greater things possibly into the future. That's a good thing, right, Mike? We would all say delayed gratification. Matter of fact, delayed gratification is one of the number one markers for kids. Like if a kid can exhibit delaying gratification, it's one of the number one markers for like success for
Makes sense.
Children. So you've got delayed gratification on one side, right? Then on the other side, you have this. You can't take it with you. So over here, we've got, you can't take it with you. When you die, it's staying here and you're gone. Wherever it is you happen to believe that you go, or nowhere. So you've got this tension between these two things, because over here you need to be smart and you need to put things away. That's a good thing. But then over here on the good thing it is, you need to be in the moment and you need to be present. And you need to spend time with your kids. You need to go on that vacation. You should, when your friends invite you to a ski trip, you should go do the ski trip. Because I have a buddy who was 54, heart attack. Happened, I think maybe about a month and a half ago. Another guy in a men's group I'm in, his neighbor was 45. Gone. Right?
Wild.
So you've got these two good things, right? So there isn't a Zen zone. It's actually a tension. There's actually like a conflict. There's a tension between going too far to one side or the other on these two very good things. And so I feel like healthy life balance doesn't look like some yoga person in a perfect state of Zen. It looks like somebody who kind of feels that tension all the time and is trying to navigate that tension with, do I stop and smell the roses today a little bit because I need to? Or do I need to press the flesh?
Press the flesh. Love that. That's really insightful. I'm glad that you chose to share that.
It's
a nice reminder to me.
Life.
Yeah. It's good shit. Here's what I want to do. I want to keep talking to you, but I fear that if I keep asking you questions, we'll be here for 3 hours. So I'm thinking what we do. Well, there's some things I definitely want to hit on, like the different stages of that contractor cycle.
Sure.
The symptoms, the headaches, and the underlying issues, because we've got contractors of all sizes that tune in. So what I'm thinking is we two-part this, and we schedule another one. This is me like leaving my toothbrush or slippers behind. Like, yeah, I got a reason to come back. So if you're cool with that, I would like to do that. Are you cool with that?
I'm very cool with that. That'd be awesome.
All right, fantastic. So before we wrap up, do you have any questions for me? I always give people the opportunities. You hit me with one that stumped me earlier, and that doesn't really happen. So good of you. Yeah.
What's the easiest way with what you do? Because I know you do. I don't know the super details, ins and outs, because this is the first time you and I have ever spoken.
Oh yeah, I forgot to tell people that we've never talked before.
Yeah, we've never talked before. Like literally, I accepted Michael's friend request, and then he sent me a link to be on the podcast. And I literally messaged him. I was like, "Hey, this just is like right into your podcast. Is that what do you think?" And Michael's just like, "Hey, let's just do it." And I was like, "Okay, let's roll." So yeah, this is the first time we've ever spoken. So I would love to learn more about kind of what you guys do, or what you consider your guys' is like your bullseye, or what you're after as a marketing company. But what would be, if somebody's looking at like lead generation and creation, either from their outsourced firm that they use, or from doing it in-house, what is probably the number one to three key things that they should be paying the most attention to?
Yeah, I would say your cost per lead, your cost per demo, and your cost per acquisition, right?
Boom. I love that. Yep.
There's a lot of
so that was a little selfish. I wanted to confirm that I was correct.
That's fine. And at the same time, in our first time speaking, see what he knows, sir. No, those are the most important, right? Because ultimately those things are going to boil down to how effective is your marketing. Now, in different scenarios, things like impressions or click-through rates, or, there's other things that you could look at to gauge how healthy a campaign is. But at the end of the day, somebody's trying to sell you value. The value should be, how much money did you make from this thing? And that takes two to tango, right? So you've got to know your numbers and attribute things correctly within your CRM, have clean data, and they've got to actually be performing to where there are things to attribute.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
When I started the agency, it was more, I just, you hear every time somebody would hit me up, is conversation something along the lines of, I was promised this, it didn't get shit close to it. This company's holding my website hostage. This is happening. They took my ad account. I can't get good reporting. So really, I took all of those experiences and kind of reverse engineered. How do we manifest the exact opposite, where people are just emphatic about talking about us, working with us, what we're doing for them, and try to build a company in that way, through that vein. Because at the end of the night, like, I want to be able to sleep. I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror, feel good about what we do, know that we're making an impact. It's not the most profitable. It's way more profitable to sell a bunch of $500 campaigns and, shit that's never going to work, because everybody, but the vast majority, I don't know this as based off a study, but I would have to imagine, in my experience, that 80+% of contractors, they either don't have a marketing advertising budget, or they have a budget, which is, it's X amount of dollars. It's $10,000 a year. It's $20,000 a year. They buy services based on what people sell them as being best for them. And then they never check in. They look at it like utility bill, right? And it's such an inconsequential amount of money to them that they don't care enough to do the heavy lifting of digging into those things. Ignorance is bliss in that scenario. But if you take a look at it, it's like, this is doing nothing for you. You should stick that $1,000 a month right into your bank account and, just not do it.
Right. Yeah. That's something in the marketing space that is missing a little bit. I feel, just from being in the industry, but I'm outside of the marketing side of things, is having a partner as a contractor, having a marketing partner that helps, that gives you the tools and the knowledge and the ability to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Because that's where, like you said, that's where those horror stories come from. I just spent $30,000 on this guy and he didn't produce any leads for me, or, this person promised this. And every time they go back to that marketing person, like, well, this takes time. I can't turn leads on for you overnight, which is a totally true statement. Right?
The guy that's robbing you and the guy that's going to crush it for you are going to tell you the same exact thing. Who do you believe?
Right? Both of those things are true. And you're right. The guy telling you could be a thief, and the guy telling you could be 100% right. So that's so difficult to navigate as a contractor, because all of us contractors will admit, like, I'm not good at marketing. That's just not my jam. I'm a good contractor. And so you kind of like, you go into it with trust, but you're also going in blind, versus going, okay, and once again, looking at it from the outside, like, how do I set accountability, so that this person is like, I pay a subcontractor to put a roof on. I can go look and see if the roof is on. Right.
And you know enough about roofing to where, if you're project managing it, you can stop shit before it's cataclysmic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with the marketing side, if you're 3 months in, you have no idea what's wrong or right, and you're just hoping for the best.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, 100 leads a month is just right around the corner, right? Like, is it? I don't know.
I swear. You're going to get there.
It's right there. You're so close.
Yeah. So I made a video probably about 2 years ago now. It was 21 questions to ask any marketing agency, before you buy shit from them, right? So it's things like, will I own my website? What does the process look like if I were to leave, right? Because there's some companies out there that got keen to the resentment of the general public of contractors of saying, nobody told me I didn't own my website. So what they did was they started building websites that the contractor owns, but it's on a proprietary content management system. So it's useless when they leave the company for all intents and purposes.
Okay.
So yeah, you own it. Okay. But you can't use it. Same thing. You don't know. You might as well not own it.
Might as well not own it. Yeah.
Do you own your ad account? What happens? Are they going to create a Search Console account, Google Analytics? Do you own that data? Or are they going to hold you hostage with it? Get recommendations or get references. Talk to people they've worked with. Talk to someone that they used to work with that they no longer work with. Relationships are great until they're not. Like, I want to hear about the fucking divorce. What was that like?
Yeah.
How ugly did it get? Was it was it diplomatic or was it? Were you guys in court for 2 years?
Right. Like. That's a really good one. Even contractors too. I make this recommendation and nobody likes it, but it's really powerful. When you're giving references to a homeowner, okay, you should include in your references somebody where things went sideways.
Yeah.
Like now, you obviously don't want to give a reference to somebody where it went sideways and you're still in court with this person. Like, no. But everybody.
One where you made it right and the customer ended up happy.
Everybody looks like a hero when things go perfectly.
Right.
But your real character comes out when they don't. And so imagine having a homeowner call somebody where things didn't go great. And the homeowner's like, oh, yeah, like it went sideways and it was ugly there for a little bit. But, man, I got to tell you, Mike really stepped up. He took care of it. I don't even know if he made any money on the project at the end of the day. But my took care of my home and my family and, made everything whole and right. And so with the marketing is a great thing. Like sometimes you part ways with somebody because it just wasn't a great fit. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with it.
But that's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah, I just got to get out in front of more people, get more people watching the content. I'll do my best. Because, there's the vast majority of the time, the reason why these contractors land in the situation they are is because they don't know, right? And they find out, but they find out too late. They find out when they're trying to leave that they don't own their website or they're not getting X, Y, or Z. And it's going to have, and that the marketing company who went out of their way to help them by buying their domain for them, they didn't buy it for them. They bought it for themselves. And now you've done years of SEO work to that domain and they're not giving it to you unless you do X, Y, Z.
Right.
And that's just, you never want a gun in your head and gun to your head. And if you do have to have guns to your head, you want as few guns to your head as possible, especially in your business, right?
You got enough guns at your head as it is.
Right. So it's, information, I don't want to say is an antidote to that, but the closest thing to it. So at least you could know that, hey, I'm making an informed decision. I've done my due diligence. And you should do that. I would encourage whether you're considering us or anybody else, you should spend some time investigating that company and definitely talk to some folks they've worked with in the past before you decide. Most agencies, like if their customers are happy with them, I could give you a dozen people that you could call today and they would probably answer the phone and or message you back. If I'm like, hey, would you mind talking to somebody? They're more than happy to do it. So that's usually an indication that they do well because, with marketing, you have to keep somebody happy consistently, day over day, week over week, month over, and it's not always easy, right?
Yeah.
And not everything's always rainbows and butterflies, but like you said, it's such a small percentage of the time where that character shows and like, what are your company's values? What do you guys believe in? And what are you willing to do to make sure that when things aren't great, there's a amicable situation or solution that could be had. You guys are doing your best. You're actually trying to make an impact. And then you do, right? The ebbs and flows in marketing are real. Last year during the election season, God, everybody was freaking out. I'm like, guys, we've been here before. We know exactly what's going on here.
Yeah.
No
kidding.
leads are down, cost per lead is up. I guarantee you, if you look in your CRM and sort by sales reps, if you have that ability, which if you don't, you should, I guarantee you that your sales reps closing percentages are down on leads that they're running. It just is what it is. People are afraid to spend money, so they're looking less and they're buying less. We'll get through it. This too shall pass.
Yes.
And it did. But it always gets a little hairy when cost per lead starts going up, cost per appointment, cost per job sold. I get it. So we'll give you there. We'll give you some recommendations on some things you could do offline that you should probably do 6 months before to have that pipeline of offline opportunities. But, just rowing in the same direction towards a common goal. Find a strategic partner that'll do that for you. And if you do that, you'll be happy that you did.
Yeah. Yeah. And find some people who've been through that. Like, there are companies out there that are 20, 30, 35, 40 years old, like contractors.
It's crazy.
And they've seen, at 30 years, they've pretty much seen it all. Now, they might not be 20, 40, $50 million. They might be $5 million company. They might be an $8 million company, but they've been around for 30 years.
Right.
Like, they've seen all of it, and they're still trucking. So you're totally right. Like, you'll get through it. And there's some dude, COVID was an interesting one for sure. Watching the way different business owners responded to COVID, because I saw two. There were the turtles and the rabbits, and the turtles were like, batten down the hatches, stop spending all my money, like, just try to get into my shell and wait it out. And then there were contractors who were like, this is the time. And it was such a weird, like, difference in mentality between those folks that would just go for it. They were like, oh, this is it. Like, they took their PPE money and went and hired people with it. Like, like doubling down on marketing. They're spending more. They're trying to grow, and they're like an essential business. And so they just ran at COVID.
For my clients, they started as a turtle immediately. That was a knee jerk, just turned into a turtle. And then, a good amount of them morphed into a rabbit almost immediately. Like, after thinking it through, it's like, dude, people are going to be home. They're not going to have money to spend shit on because they're not going out.
They're not traveling.
Not doing anything. They can't do shit.
So it's like, now all of a sudden the projects that they were thinking about doing around their house, they're going to do, because they're like, I'm not going to go buy a house right now. I can't. So we might as well redo the bathroom, or we might as well get the roof done, or whatever it might have been.
Yeah, because the thing I feel like that was probably the most impactful is that nobody knew, like in New York, nobody knew when the fuck we'd be able to leave the house and do shit again, right? So you have this uncertainty. You're staring at the renovation you're trying to get done. Your roof's leaking. Whatever's going on, it's like, it's flagrantly obvious and in your face every single minute of every day that this needs to be done. Let's pull the trigger.
Yeah, yeah.
That was a wild time.
Yeah, it was wild. It definitely freaked everybody out for sure. But you know what? Like, once again, here we are looking back at it. And there are probably people looking back at it going, I wish I'd have done some things differently. Oh, yeah. But we can only look back. Hindsight's 20/20, right?
All the time.
But you need to keep that in mind whenever and this is just a personal thing, like, when you go through something hard now, think about the last time you went through something hard. And you got through it. And now you look back at it. Well, is it possible to look back at yourself now? Does that make sense?
Oh, I just had this conversation with somebody the other day. I'm like, literally 5 years from now, we'll fucking be laughing at the fact of how stressed we are about this situation right now.
Yes.
I have I usually still stress the same amount, but I have the awareness to know, but it's getting to a place where you feel that, right? So I'm working on it, okay? I'm working on it. I just care too much. That's what.
My
greatest weakness.
It's the greatest weakness. Oh, you'd nail that interview question, wouldn't you? If you had one flaw, what would it be? I think I just care too much.
Just care too much, man. It's a cape and a kryptonite.
That's right.
This was amazing. I am so glad that our first real interaction was on this podcast, and I got to know you a bit better. You shared some really insightful things that I know I'm grateful for, and I'm sure you're grateful for.
Yes, sir.
Those of you tuning in. I'll send you that link again so we can get the second one scheduled here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, man.
But I appreciate your time, man. I certainly do.
No, this has been a blast. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for the conversation. I really enjoy it. And hopefully this has provided some value to the people who listen to it. I'm sure somebody's going to grab something out of it that is helpful.
I think you made it a situation where it'd be really hard not to. So thank you for that. And thank you to you for tuning in. I mean, you got, all this content everywhere and you're choosing us, man, that makes me feel good. And thanks to the team at Roofer for help making this happen. We appreciate you guys.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.